Hello, and welcome to the Learning and Design Mastermind Vodcast, a vodcast that bridges the worlds of instructional design and many interesting topics in our field. I am Daisy Barreto and your host, and with me somewhere on the screen is Sherry Conklin, our co-host, and I'm thrilled to be your guide as we explore these exciting topics. In each episode, we'll cover some of the latest trends, practical tips from professionals in the field that can help you create and design great learning experience for your students. And here with us today is Colin Taper, an MIT alumnus. And Colin, could you please tell us more about your position, where you're currently working, what do you do, so people that are watching this or even listen to this can kind of get a sense of who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, Daisy, Sherry, thanks so much for having me. I currently work the same place you two work. I work at UNCW. I work in the Office of Distance Education and E-Learning. My current title is Instructional Technology and Video Services Manager. We tried to make it even longer, but that's what we landed on. And my day-to-day job is really one of support. So I support those who provide the instructional technology support, primarily with, say, Canvas support. So support those who support faculty. And then I also support our videography team. And we've got three, I think world-class may be a bit overused, but they really are three world-class video producers on our team.
That's great, Colin. And one of the things that I was just going to say, especially with the whole online learning, and especially when we're talking about asynchronous online learning, a key aspect or maybe a key part of it is videos, right? Especially lectures or video casts that instructors do. So what role do you think that video service play in enhancing the education experience for students? And maybe could you share some examples of good use in video service in instruction, that your office have done or that you think that we should see more of?
That's a good question. So, and let me pause right here and ask, do you want this to be like a conversation? Like, is it okay if I ask you questions? All right, we'll
Yes,
get ready.
sir.
So I'm gonna start asking some questions. So, Daisy, that's a great question. You guys teach online, you guys make videos. What are the videos that you feel have really resonated with your students? Like
Well,
a lot of views for the video, right? Like you can see just from the numbers that students have viewed it often.
exactly. And so, for example, because we also get their feedback on the videos, right? Like a lot of students talk
Mm,
about like what matters to them. I think some of the things is when we make videos that are personal, right? That is relevant to
mm,
their content. The feedback, and especially once a lot of people are creating videos in the beginning or early age, a lot of people thought that we just need to put everything in one video. But we
mm,
know, this is me, and I know that the people that actually took my class that I really, talk about in multimedia learning is chunking, that video. So you cannot have, even for us, even if you go to attend a session where it's very lengthy, you start rolling your eyes or start, being distracted. So you really need to have, if I have that chunk of time, my content needs to be here's what it is, precise, and then you have multiple of
mm.
those, especially if you need to cover multiple contents for the learner. So this is just like something that I can talk to you just like on top of my hand that I can think of.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll tell you, one of the things that we find really effective is when the instructor is comfortable with the form of the video, and I'll explain that in a second. And it also delivers something that meets the student's expectation, which I think, Daisy, is a point that you were just making. So I'll give you an example. Um, a lot of folks who teach face to face, right? Especially if the information is best displayed visually, right? They'll write on the board, right? So they're used to being in the classroom, they write on the board. And so when you have tools like a light board, right, which is it's just a plane of glass that's got LEDs around the perimeter, when faculty can get in front of a board and visually represent their concepts the same way they would in a class, right? Like they feel comfortable, and chances are they're displaying something that through word alone may be challenging to visualize or to comprehend. And so we find that those lightboard videos, especially the ones we've made with the Cameron School of Business, have been very effective. And I'm saying effective, I'm taking a guess as to how effective they were academically, but I know numbers and I can see the number of times that say like a student is watching that video, right? Because the analytics we have through our, the resource we've got at UNCW allows us to see that. I mean, that's telling, right? That's the student saying, oh, this is important. Let me go back and watch this again. So we find that those videos are effective. And of course, the point that you made, Daisy, the connection with the student, right? Yes, right. Here's something that speaks to your experience. Here's feedback on an assignment. So I think what we're talking about is the role that it can play both in delivering instruction and also maybe creating more of a connection between student and instructor.
Exactly. And I really like that you even mentioned about like these aspects, because one of the things that people sometimes don't even pay attention, or they're not aware of the importance, right? Because we've seen some of these YouTube videos, like, I think like the Khan Academy is one good example of just like someone really doing that math and students just going there to get that content that they may not have. And I think
Mm.
sometimes we are just thinking that it's just this notion of here transfer the content for the students without that application, without that presenting and take, right? So here's how you solve that
Mm.
problem, instead of just being very lecture based, like, so I think some of the things that I'm hearing, even you talking, and some of the things that I see that is effective is when it is applied. So the learning is applied even within the video context, but of course there are
Mm.
some that might be different depending on what you need to do for the learner, right? Like, so some of them might be video demo if you are actually presenting a step-by-step process that they need to follow, then you're going to have to be like, here's me taking this and then showing you how to do, and then you're going to replicate that on your own, right?
I think one of the challenges, I know that you two don't face it, but I think for folks who are newer to teaching online, I think also newer doesn't mean like in 2021 I taught online. Like if that was your only experience, you're still pretty new to it, right? If you only done it once. Is that idea of, what does the online space look like and what's my role within it as the instructor? And right, sometimes we go to what feels comfortable. If you're used to lecturing face to face, then I mean, what do you think the videos are going to look like? It's really natural to say the video is going to be very similar to what you would do in face to face, right? But like there's a really salient thing that's missing that happens when you speak to people who are right in front of you, right? It's two-way communication unless you're like, I'm not taking questions at this time, right? Unless you lecture like that, it's discourse. If you're only showing one side of it, it's very easy to create, even like highly produced instructional content. You can tell the students are going to start looking at their watch if they wear watches. They're going to start looking at things on their phone, right? They're going to start doing like the worst of Zoom behavior, which is when you can tell the person is multitasking when you're like having a conversation, right? So, one of the places where folks can be really effective is to learn what tools exist within this video platform such that I can encourage, even if temporally it doesn't play out like a face-to-face lecture, encourage discourse between myself and the student, right? And that's pretty easy with a lot of video platforms. I mean, it's easy in the sense that once you know, oh, I just use this tool, right? You can encourage it. And that way the student doesn't feel like they're just being spoken at. You know what I mean? Like it's like, why are some podcasts really, brilliant? It's because of who they have on. They're like hyper engaging people. You know what I mean? Like, if I was an instructor, I can't be that person. Like, I can't be that engaging, but I can create an experience for the student where they can ask me questions about what it is that I've said, sort of within the platform itself, and then I can answer them. And Daisy, to your point about instructional material like a Khan Academy, that's something you can't get through there, right? The person who's instructing you is answering the questions you have about the content that's being presented. So,
Yeah, no, thank you, Colin, for just like provide more of that insight, which then leads me to the next question that I was going to ask you. I think is a very nice segue, like what advice would you give to educators, and even instructional designers, that are working with educators or faculty members or trainers, who are hesitant to adopt new technology in their teaching. And especially when it comes to, especially since we're talking about video too, I think there are new tools out there that can even enhance video, or even
mm,
create some new experience, and some people might be hesitant to use because it is. Oh, and I can give you here an example of like what I hear a lot
yeah.
from the faculty member is that they go and will say, I don't want to try because if it goes wrong or it goes south, your student's going to complain. But then you never try anything if you think that way. Then your class is just you're still
Mm,
teaching the same content over and over, right?
so that's a really good point. I think, if there are instructional designers listening, I'd say the first piece of advice is sort of the question that led to that point you just made, which is, well, why are you hesitant? Right? And asking in a way where you're understanding what their hesitancy is, right? Um, you know, I think it's fair to say that a lot of folks teach because they earnestly believe in helping others, specifically helping their students. And so if you frame it that way, like, well, hey, here's a tool. Your students are saying this tool or something in this ballpark could be helpful to them. Let's just give it a shot. The designer has to be incredibly supportive at that point, right? Because if someone is very hesitant and it's almost like they're asking for someone to hold their hand to really assist them with the process, and you pull back and say, all right, good luck, try it on your own. Not so much, right? If it does go south, and I don't know, when you said that, I thought, like, where did that expression come from? Go south. That seems like an interesting way to say, like, yeah, things are really bad. They've gone south. Anyhow, like, so making sure you provide ample support for the faculty and enough of a sort of baby step such that if things really do go wrong, it's okay. It was like a week's module. You know what I mean? It's not like you redesigned the whole course such that everything is focused on, effective use of, I don't know, name the tool, right? And then if it falls down in module one, well, it's gonna, those dominoes are gonna keep going all the way through module 15. Um, so making sure that there's ample support, really listening to why someone is hesitant to implement the technology. Um, the lens that you all teach your students to have, I can say this as a former student, right? Is like, where's the student support side as well? Because as faculty, you're going to be the point person, whether you want to or not. So making sure as a designer, as a change agent, whatever your role is, that you're helping them craft that support for students such that they don't feel overwhelmed by both learning the technology and having to support those who are learning the technology as well. And that's where an instructional technologist, for example, can be really, really helpful providing those support resources up front such that the faculty member can check that box, can know that they've provided this support. Sometimes it's just a link to the support site that the tool offers, but making sure that you provide that. In terms of video, there are all sorts of challenges that folks face that sometimes we don't even consider. Like, I'd ask you, do you two feel comfortable crafting instructional videos?
I think like, the first time that you start creating a video is always
Mm,
that notion of how even when you record your voice or you record yourself, you don't want to hear or you don't want to see yourself because you start
hmm
being your worst judge, right? Like you are your worst judge. You start like really saying, "Oh, I said this," or "Oh, this looks goofy," whatever.
Sure.
But one of the things that I learned, and this was like hearing some of even reading research about this, is that even the mistakes that you make when you're presenting information, right? Like, oops, I said something wrong, or let me rephrase this, or I'm sorry. People said that that is even better because it makes betterness is that is personal. Like the students start
Mm,
seeing the instructor as a human being instead of just that more craft and polish robot pretty much saying what is narrated on the script, without putting what makes the instructor who they are, right? Because
mm,
we all have one way of not one way, but we do have ways of saying things or being ourselves when we are speaking and communicating with others. And I say this because sometimes I even have to hold my hand because I do have this notion of talk to my hands too. So these are some of the things that you need to be aware of, right? Like, who you are as a person and how you talk and all that
My
have an
friends
effect.
say that my videos aren't very engaging. They're just me talking over slides. So I've tried to create some beyond videos this time. I'm actually
mm,
using it, Daisy. Um, to try to, and they're shorter because they're in beyond. But
mm,
I write a script for myself so that I'm not saying and my replacement for is so. And therefore, I'm reading my script and I try to give myself the normal conversation voice, but it's really not. And then it's just me going through slides. So I'm working on that. But and I'm seasoned and I'm still trying to figure out how to make my videos more engaging, like, a TED Talk speaker or someone from ATD who are just they're charismatic, even on video.
I think it's hard to, it's like if someone said to you, Sherry, like, all right, now I just want you to be more charismatic. All right, I guess so. Um, so one of the things, it's interesting in what both of you shared, one of the things that we see is that folks for whom English is not their native language, not their first language, tend to be very self-conscious about how they sound. Not so much how they look. I mean, that's no more than the rest of us are neurotic and what have you, but like more how they sound, which makes perfect sense, right? Because you are aware that this is not the language that comes most naturally to you. Maybe it's not like the language that's in your head, when you're thinking. And so, um, if you're crafting videos with folks, being aware that sometimes there are things that to you may seem like a non-issue, but to others it is a bigger issue. And so when someone says, "Oh, I want a script," you know, being okay with that, because that may be the only way that they can sort of talk themselves into delivering instructional content via video, is because they're hyper aware of even something like grammatical correctness, right? As native English speakers, we say, kind of, who cares? Like, you just, I mean, at least in America, right? You speak however you speak, right? No one's judging you for grammatical correctness unless, you're spewing off double negatives or what have you. But for someone for whom native is English, excuse me, is not their native language, they may be hyper aware of grammar, and that's sort of running in their head even while they're speaking. And so giving those folks a break and saying, yeah, use a script. That's okay.
No, that's those I mean, this is really great, Colin, and even bringing those to life, because then it help all of us, I think about this. And I was just informed that our time is getting to that
Oh no!
close up.
Sure.
So I'm gonna have to pick one answer or one other question here for you. So then, because
Sure.
that's the only thing that I'm allowed now, to just ask you one more
Mm,
question. So especially because you're talking about like your experience, in the program, in our Master of Instructional Technology. Can you talk about like, how did that experience shape your approach to instructional design, and maybe what key
mm,
lessons have you carried into your professional life? Um,
mm. That's a great question. And I'm always happy to speak about this. So I think, if on the off chance someone who doesn't teach in the MIT program listens to this, let me share that even when you feel like you're not having a good day instructionally helping out students, you still have such a profound impact on the folks who study with you. And my experience in the MIT program is really proof of that. Not not the bit about people not having a good day, but rather like the profound impact that instructors can have on students. It really is not overstating it to say that I don't know if I would be working at UNCW if it wasn't for the MIT program, because my experience within your program really, I know there's a term for this, but I'm not quite sure what it is, but it caused me to look at learning and talent development in a whole nother light. And what your program taught me, I think more than anything, well, there are a lot of things, but what comes to mind in terms of your question, Daisy, is how to look at potential instructional issues, right? It's a perspective that makes, in part for good ideas, in addition to having, good interpersonal skills. And that perspective, right? That systemic perspective that we take as instructional designers was, I don't, I had always felt like there was something missing. And then I heard that, and professionally, like that was what had been missing, that perspective. And through classes like 500 and 510, like, to, someone who doesn't know what's up like me, like my head was spinning the whole time, because I was like, oh, if you just consider like all of these variables, what you're creating is sort of the best case scenario for learning to occur. And after I learned that, I mean, I wasn't the same professionally. And, I really owe all of that to the MIT program. So when, you're sitting there during Thanksgiving, at least I was working on I thought it was a crazy project. I'm like, I didn't have time to hang out with my family because I'm sitting here trying to work on this project. But it was all worth it, because I felt like the program gave me a perspective that, like, I couldn't have gotten that studying on my own. I couldn't have gotten that just speaking to others in the field. Like, I had to experience a project-based program to go, oh, yeah, I get it. And once you have that, like, you can't unsee it. And that makes, that makes graduates of your program, really, really good instructional designers because they have that perspective.
Yeah, no, Colin, as I was hearing you say, because one of the things that even like when soon as we get students in the program early on, I think and then even I'm gonna say, like, even when I was a student going through my master, understanding what is the instructional issues, right? Identifying that is a process that is hard, right? Like, is this truly a learning problem, or is this a resource, or is it a motivation, or is something else, right? So it's important
Mhm.
to understand that. And the other thing that, as you're mentioning, that made me think about, and especially the two classes that you mentioned, is the whole systematic approach, right? Which it's hard for people to sometimes see the process as this bigger system where things are interconnected, because everything that, when you're talking about people, when you're talking about, like, inputs and outputs, and even what you're going to be creating and develop, which is a training or a learning experience for the learners, you need to understand all that. And you need to be, as we all know, this is like, evaluating and assessing to see what else can be improved. And I think this is going to be my circle of life here, even with everything that we're talking about, which is like, um video lecturing. If you're creating one and thinking, oh, this was my best video ever, and then not coming back and getting feedback from students, seeing what else can you do to either engage or improve, then you know, you're not doing the whole process, this whole systematic
Mm,
process. You really need to be seeing what better ways can I do this, or based on the feedback, these are some of the things that I should change or improve.
well done, Daisy. Good
Yeah.
job connecting all those dots.
No, it was a good, I mean, like, it's a good conversation and things to
Yeah.
to talk about, like, and especially because this has been a conversation. We ask you and you ask us. Um,
Mm,
So I wanted to say thank you, Colin, for being here with us today. And I do have more questions for you, but maybe we can come ask you to come back, another time. So, Colin, to your next podcast, that you can come and a session with us, so we can
sure,
have another one, and then we can cover more questions. But I thank you for being here, and
sure.
then everybody that is out there and watching. I hope this has been insightful to you, and continue to watch more and more videos that we can come or bringing up here on our platform. So thank you.